Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Indaba Africa. This is Chris. Once again, this is a follow-up video on my previous one about the Fairview racetrack and the butcher, slaughter, the unnecessary, uncalled for attacks on racehorses at that location outside Port Elizabeth. Well, quite a bizarre situation taking place on the 17th of September 2020 in which 150 to 200 grooms, former grooms, or goons, should I say, grooms and former grooms, as well as a number of people from an informal settlement nearby, criminally invaded the Fairview racetrack and then went into the stables and started using pangas to attack valuable racehorses, slicing them, cutting the throats of horses. At least one horse died. Mark the Doorman, a racehorse, died as a consequence of these violent attacks. The horses were traumatized beyond belief. Several horses were reportedly euthanized by veterinarians after the fact because of the horrific injuries that were inflicted upon them, including reportedly broken legs. Of course, you know, with a horse, they're not going to survive that sort of thing. Breaking with tradition, I'm going to be reading from news reports. I have something here from The Citizen, from SA People, The Times Live, and also The South African. I'll be talking to you about this and reading some of the comments from this and also offering some analysis back on it. So this one's from The Citizen. It was titled on the 22nd of September. This is just 3 days ago. Fairview protest, the current state of play. So it's an update as to what's happened in nearly a week since then. And this story starts out with the following. Transformation in South Africa's horse racing industry has been thrust into the limelight by last week's protest at Fairview Racecourse, with a rescue plan now finally granting the long-simmering grooms issue much-needed urgency. Well, I will give them credit. The author, Mike Moon, does use appropriate adjectives and language once you start the story, but this is the opening paragraph of the story. Transformation. I'm sorry. What are we talking about here? We know what transformation is. It's a word that has been abused by politicians in South Africa to mean stealing everything from law-abiding South Africans and using racial discrimination to pervade every aspect of public and private life to essentially balance the scales for a system that ended 26 years ago because the African National Congress has proven unwilling or incapable of improving education and living conditions for South Africans. Transformation. It's code for race mercantilism. That's what it is. So what does it mean? So I have to ask this question with the horse racing industry. What do you mean by transformation? Is your intent to ensure that more black South Africans are horse owners? How do you do that? You're going to steal the horses through expropriation without compensation from their owners, many of whom are not even South African. They live abroad, but they fund the industry, which provides jobs to grooms, to veterinarians, to trainers, and provides income to South Africans. So what is transformation? Why is Mike Moon telling us this? Transformation. What does this have to do with transformation? Once again, utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. So he says, and this is the next paragraph, horse racing is reeling from the mob attack on Port Elizabeth stables of trainer Yvette Bremner last week, with the incident making headlines around the world and debates getting heated. Indeed, debates have been heated. For those of us who grew up on a farm or have lived in a farm or have cared for or been around horses in our lifetime, you cannot help but be appalled by what happened on the 17th of September in Port Elizabeth. He continues, disgruntled former grooms of Bremner's Dippin' Blue Yard, along with grooms from neighboring stables and scores of fellow residents of a nearby informal settlement, forced their way into the training center at Fairview and chased 28 horses from their stables, allegedly in revenge for a labor dispute that did not go in their favor. Now, that's accurate. That is what happened. We've seen a lot of reporting on this, but let me continue. One horse died, as I mentioned. That was Mark the Doorman, and about a dozen more were badly injured as the baying crowd of 150 chased the loose animals around the property, beating them with knobkerries, slashing them with pangas, and throwing stones. Horrific and unbelievable. Where were security forces that the racetrack purportedly had hired? Where was the South African Police Service? And for that matter, given that it's lockdown and the South African National Defense Force is still being employed around the country, where was SANDF? Why was there no response to this? These horses were as vulnerable as rural South Africans are, neglected by the security services and by the government responsible for public safety, leaving them to the devices of criminal syndicates, organized gangs, revenge seekers, and criminals of opportunity who butcher, torture, and murder humans. And now they're doing it to horses as well. Animal welfare groups such as the National Society for the Protection and Care of Animals and the East Cape Horse Care Unit vowed to press their own charges of animal cruelty. One man was arrested on Tuesday this week. No news on that. Seems to be some sort of media blackout as to what's happened since then. As I mentioned, This was from the stables of trainer Yvette Bremner. Bremner and her partner, Hedley McGrath, who's a prolific investor in racehorses, said they're quitting. They're leaving horse racing altogether. McGrath said, "I'm exiting without doubt." He added that Bremner, a leading trainer in Port Elizabeth for decades and a highly respected horsewoman throughout the country, had been badly traumatized by the events on Thursday and would be handing in her license. Horse racing in South Africa may have suffered an irreversible blow as a consequence of this action. Now, most of the Dipping Blue horses were relocated from Fairview to the Sommerfeld Training Center after this. That's outside Durban, so they've been moved quite a distance. Now, some United Kingdom and Irish-based members of the International Racing Club, which has a number of horses in Bremner's care, have quit the ownership syndicate, saying they want no part in such things. Now, some folks in South Africa for other racetracks decided that it would be a good idea to wear black silks in response to this vile attack. But the National Horse Racing Authority refused to allow the International Racing Club to race its horses in black silks at other venues as a sign of protest. Virtue signaling. People can protest and tear up the streets in South Africa with no response from the police, but its own body, the National Horse Racing Authority, denied the IRC the opportunity to put black silks on as a sign of mourning and respect for the horses who were butchered. Now, Mike Moon points out very clearly that the incident has deep political and racial undertones with social media expressions of horror at the cruelty of animals and balance against the plight of grooms. Seriously, the plight of grooms. When does unemployment or a labor dispute ever justify murder or assault or mayhem or the destruction of animals? It never does. It never does. And that's moral equivocating, trying to say that it's legitimate on social media to listen to the plight of grooms. If you cared so much about the plight of grooms, where were you people on social media for the past several months? This occurred in February, the incident that is underlying proximate cause, which led to this event. Many observers feel that the grooms have been treated poorly for ages in South Africa. So what? It's not germane to the actions that took place on the 17th of September. And if you think it is, you're part of the problem. Disastrous political administration in the Eastern Cape, ruled by the African National Congress. With just a brief exception, the Nelson Mandela Bay metropolitan area was ruled for about 2 years by the Democratic Alliance in coalition with a fractious coalition, but managed to be in power and improve conditions. Governance improved dramatically under DA leadership with a minority government in coalition. But the ANC was able to regain control of Port Elizabeth. And we see disastrous political administration. Water supplies dry up, indigent people forced to eat wild vegetation to stay alive, and this has been compounding the situation according to Mike Moon. I don't disagree with that. Now, for his part, McGrath said that he'd been forced to employ armed guards to protect the Dipping Blue horses around the clock for the past 7 months. He also added that the gate to the training center was manned by a single guard and claimed that on Thursday it had been left open, allowing the attackers to stream onto the premises. Well, from the video that I saw that's available out there on social media, it certainly looked as if there were no guards present and that they just were able to access it at will. Once again, back to transformation. Transformation in South Africa's racing industry is front and center at the rescue plan drawn up by the Pumaleya Business Rescue Team, with the long-simmering grooms issue one of the immediate priorities. The events of what is being called Black Thursday might force rescuers to give it more urgency. Well, the events of Black Thursday likely mean the end of the horse racing industry in South Africa, at least as we know it. Certainly it ends the investment of Hedley McGrath. That's the case. And Fairview will never recover from this. Additional reports, this is from the SA People. This is the worst day of my life. What they have done to my horses is barbaric, and no human being can do that to animals. They stabbed and stoned my horses. One is dead, 29 are injured and traumatized. The vet will determine later the extent of injuries. That was Hedley McGrath on the 17th of September. Now, this conflict goes back to an incident that occurred in February in which a worker apparently injured a horse, and McGrath says he then stabbed the horse on the neck, for which he was was fired. McGrath says that all these workers looked after million-rand expensive race horses that can't even harm a fly. They came to me on the 14th of February after the incident happened on the 7th, and they said, "Please, boss, pay this guy so that he can go away." I said, "I don't pay someone who stabs my horse, and no one can bribe me." He stabbed my horse on the neck, and it nearly died. Then they decided to stay home and not come to work. And so since February, according to McGrath, the groomsmen have simply not come to work. Well, they're getting kind of hungry, so they went to the unemployment insurance fund only to find out that since they abandoned their jobs, they wouldn't get anything. I'll get to that. But Mbeko Colisile, a worker, said that in February, one of our colleagues was busy cutting one of the horse's hair. The horse jumped and he mistakenly cut its ear. But our boss got angry and fired him, claiming that the vet would charge 13,000 Rand. We asked the owner not to fire him, but to deduct the money from all of us because that mistake could happen to all of us. But he fired all of us instead. Well, until the last sentence, this was a plausible story from Mbeko Colisile. But you honestly expect me to believe that if grooms are so poorly paid that you're all willing to have 13,000 Rand deducted from your wages because of the mistake of someone else? You freely admit that it was a mistake. I'm not buying the story. Not buying it. The workers took the matter to the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration, the CCMA, in March. But the case didn't go anywhere. And eventually they decided to drop the case. They decided to drop the case and ask the Unemployment Insurance Fund and service money because they were financially struggling. But Wednesday this week, the day before, the workers went to the Port Elizabeth Department of Labor to apply for the unemployment insurance. Now, they stopped working in February. If they're telling the truth that they were fired, ladies and gentlemen, why did they not make an unemployment insurance claim in February? They didn't, because it's a lie. They waited until September, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, 7 months after they stopped working at the Fairview racetrack. Only then did these groomsmen approach the Unemployment Insurance Fund on Wednesday of last week, the 16th of September. And they were told that they were not eligible because they had absconded from work. Well, that's what the government-run Unemployment Insurance Fund said, not Hedley McGrath, not the Fairview racetrack. So their credibility is a little weak here. On Thursday, the workers and surrounding community members stormed the stables and began attacking horses with stones, pangas, sticks, and knobkerries. Police were called to disperse them with rubber bullets and stun grenades. Really? They didn't get there in time, did they now? After the incident, McGrath says, we don't owe them a cent. We followed all the labor laws of this country. I have a court order against them. Now I'm busy with my legal team to see which is the next step to take. These horses are owned by prominent people who are now also calling me to check on the safety of their horses, said McGrath. Unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. This is the situation that has unfolded in South Africa. This from the Times said that McGrath made an effort to make sure that some of the rumors about what was happening with the horse attacks at the Fairview Racecourse were clearly stated. There were misrepresentations. So McGrath went on record, this is from the Times Live, on the 17th, the very same day that it happened. I'd like the owners of all the racehorses that are currently stabled at Fairview with the various trainers to know that it was not just Yvette Bremner's grooms who took part in the riots this morning. It was also grooms from the other yards who were part of the attacking and rioting. The same grooms who are employed to look after their horses were part of this riot. They need to ask themselves, how safe are their horses really? And that would explain why many horses have now been relocated from that location. McGrath further said to all the detractors who think they're clever by spreading false stories about what happened at Fairview this morning, make sure you check your facts and tell the truth. He described the events on Thursday as the most barbaric attacks I've ever seen, and pray to God we never see it again. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, one person had been arrested and was supposed to appear in court on Tuesday. 150 to 200 people led this attack. There's video footage of it. Supposedly the saps eventually came, according to that news report, but we've seen no evidence of that. Why didn't they arrest people? This informal settlement is very close to the racetrack. This from the South African on the 17th as well. Fairview horses, saps may prosecute social media users. Now, it's funny how the South African Police Service has nothing to say when Cyril Ramaphosa lies to Bloomberg Media and distorts the truth, claiming there are no farm murders in South Africa, that Trump is misinformed, no white South Africans have been murdered on farms. That's demonstrably false. Nearly every day a South African is attacked on a farm in South Africa, white, black, Indian colored. And at least once a week, South Africans are murdered on farms in a violent fashion, oftentimes with nothing stolen, nothing taken whatsoever other than the vehicles as a way to get away. Money, mobile phones, televisions, physical property left behind, safes open, but the valuables left in them. What is going on here? No effort by the saps to point out that they are going to charge Cyril Ramaphosa with spreading fake news. But in the instance when horses are butchered and saps is slow to respond, their response is to threaten the public with fake news. Similar to the ministry responsible for the Tourism Relief Fund earlier this year and for the Solidarity Fund when they put out applications online from the ministry, from the department saying that, are you Black Economic Empowerment certified? if you're not eligible for this relief funds to survive COVID-19. Your business, if you're minority owned. They pulled that back after thousands of people had downloaded that application form, and we have evidence of it. But the minister responsible for that department then came out and claimed that people claiming that that was the case were spreading fake news, when in fact she was spreading fake news with malicious lies. And it was her department who put out that denied access to the funds. And we've seen it unfold that thousands of minority-owned businesses have been denied access to relief funds, even funds donated by private citizens. Fake news. There's your fake news from the government itself. But SAPS is obsessed with fake news, so-called fake news, from people sharing things on social media. The attack has been described as revolting, shocking, and barbaric, killing and maiming horses that were staying in stables. But SAPS has warned that it's not just these criminals who may find themselves in trouble. No, it's not even these criminals. Much like the rapists and the murderers throughout South Africa, very few of whom ever are brought to the docket, even fewer charged with a crime. They operate with impunity in South Africa. 150, 200 people caught on film, and a single arrest is made of a 49-year-old man. A single arrest. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Public order policing, the community and security companies, specialized police units, as well as the SAPS Kabega Park members assisted in stabling staff and rounding up the traumatized animals. The horses are race horses. A case of malicious injury to property is open and under investigation, and additional charges may be added. Really? A single case? An investigation? What does that investigation reveal to you now in over a week? Thursday last week. It's now Friday the following week. 8 days. Not much has been revealed, has it? Priscilla Naidoo has warned the general public about their own conduct going forward, though. She has reminded social media users that they could also be criminally charged for posting false information about the Fairview incident. Really? Really? Again, I ask, could you please have a conversation with Julius Malema of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Floyd Shivambu of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Cyril Ramaphosa of the African National Congress for spreading fake news. One horse was found dead about a kilometer away in the opening near the houses, allegedly stabbed and wounded. Police, however, are warning social media users to refrain from posting false information relating to the incident. Priscilla Naidoo from the SAPS spokesman. Colonel Priscilla Naidoo also said the following: this can cause the current situation to escalate into confusion and retaliatory conduct by the community. Any person who publishes, distributes, discloses, transmits, circulates, or spreads false information on fake news is guilty of an offense and may be prosecuted. Really? How about the people that murdered a horse, that slaughtered a horse, the horse butchers, or the 150 people criminally invaded private property and traumatized millions of rands worth of racehorses over a labor dispute from February in response to the government not paying them from the unemployment insurance fund? Now, the government may be perfectly in its rights because they abandoned their jobs. They weren't fired, they abandoned it. So it's a fair point for the government not to pay them. But this is legitimate. And the leftists in South Africa on social media justify or try to use moral equivalency to downplay what happened here? Ladies and gentlemen, why is the African National Congress in power? What is it ruling? What is it doing other than pilfering and protecting the cadres, the elites of South Africa? This is beyond distressing. And now we are over a week with almost no resolution as to what's happened. And in this very moment in South Africa, although it's after midnight now, I'm sure they've given up, but this very day in South Africa, gangs of thugs out on the highways and streets around South Africa, digging up the blacktop, destroying the roads, preventing people from traveling. For what? Because they're angry about not being paid unemployment? Well, you need to talk to the African National Congress, not destroying infrastructure. You bunch of morons, you idiotic twits. Knock it off. Knock it off. Your anger should be directed at your ruling party in South Africa. The party that you voted for, South Africa. That's right. They still managed to get 58% of those who bothered to vote in 2019 to return them to power for this. This was not the vision of the Freedom Charter of 1955. This was not the vision of Steve Biko and the Black Consciousness Movement. This was not the vision of liberal South Africans who fought to end apartheid, the Lone Reed in the parliament for decades, Helen Suzman, the Black Sash Movement, the Pan-African Congress, legitimate people who participated in the struggle for the African National Congress. This is beyond comprehension. Ladies and gentlemen, it must end. The African National Congress must be defeated at the polls in the municipal elections of 2021 and then rooted out of government in democratic elections in 2023. Or 2024. This cannot continue. The African National Congress is no longer in the business of liberating South Africa. They're in the business of liberating South Africans from their property, from their rights, from their freedoms, from their liberties, with their race mercantilism and their attacks on all South Africans, which undermine civil order in South Africa. It's heartbreaking to say this about the African National Congress, folks, but you cannot deny this any longer. It's simply the case. Well, if you enjoyed this video or found it thought-provoking or interesting, feel free to subscribe to the channel by smashing that subscription button right down there. Be sure to toggle the bell icon, because if you don't toggle the bell icon, you'll never know about additional videos, my live streams, and my interviews with a variety of people from around the world on interesting topics for you. If you'd like to leave a comment, comments are welcome. If you leave a malicious or vile comment, you may be the subject of a future entertaining video, or you'll simply be ignored. And finally, I ask that you smash the like button right down there, because likes drive viewership. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa crossing the Rubicon. I shake my head. God bless. Thank you for your patronage, and we'll catch you here next time on Chris Wine Africa.